Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for hanging in there today and joining us for the very last breakout room before our final comments and ending the day. My name's Shaun, and I am the lead for the California E-Bike Incentive Project, and today we just wanted to talk a little bit about the issues and barriers with e-bike adoption and some of the problems and solutions we see on the horizon come today. So with that, I think we can jump right in. Let me see if there we go. All right, and joining me today, I have Michelle and Allie from Caltrans and UC Davis, who will be touching a little bit on the infrastructure piece for e-bike adoption. Whoops. Let me see if I can go. Is it the red arrow to go back one? Sorry. There we go. All right. So let me just jump in quickly, a little bit about the California E-Bike Incentive Project. This is a e-bike incentives provided to low-income Californians to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and provide transportation options to residents who are in the greatest need. We kicked off our first application window in December, and we've had a huge demand of almost 100,000 people in our first application window, so we're seeing a lot of interest in the program. Just a little bit of general information. We currently have, thank you, $13 million in the current grant. We're going out with a new solicitation for an additional $18 million. And we allow Class 1, 2, 3 e-bikes. We allow brick and mortar stores as well as online retailers, as long as those retailers are based in California, whether that's manufacturing or a store or a product in a storefront. So as I mentioned, it's e-bike incentives for low-income Californians, so that's anyone 18 years or older at or below the 300% of the federal poverty level. So in this table, for example, a household of one would be about $45,000. We also have a second tier for what we're calling priority applicants. Those are folks who either make at or below 225% of the federal poverty level, reside in a low-income community or a disadvantaged community. And they are eligible for an additional $250, which would bring up their max incentive up to $2,000. All right, so as I just mentioned, the max incentive is $2,000, with the base incentive being $1,750. This number was largely based on the work we did with public work groups and outreach to our stakeholders and communities. And specifically that this is a low-income program, we wanted to make sure that we were providing an incentive that really covers all of the bases for folks that lack that upfront capital and additional accessories such as locks, helmets, mirrors, racks. And what we really heard is that a lot of the folks are looking to turn these e-bikes into car replacements. So really trying to help them reach that goal as much as possible, and helping out their travel patterns, whether that's commuting or just running errands or even just leisure. Okay, current project status. We launched in last December. We're just wrapping up processing all those applications, so roughly 1.8 million of e-bike incentives distributed. We have a CBO network that we work with that we built up exclusively for this project, roughly 22 CBOs across California that provide outreach and education. And of course, our retailer network, we have almost 400 retailers now in our network across California to provide as many purchase options and e-bike models as possible for our applicants. And window 2, okay, so we actually just released our press release during the symposium today. It's been a little bit of a hectic day, but we are launching window 2 April 29th this month, so some great news. If you guys need a link to that, please feel free to contact me after the breakout room. Happy to provide that to you guys. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of data for our project, and I wanted to, thank you. It's just, all right, there we go, yeah. Some really interesting results coming in now. And what's interesting about our project data is this is a fairly accurate representation of what we would see out in the real world from market research, in that we have a lot of folks 45 years and older who are coming into the e-bike world, a lot of new riders. I think what's also interesting, and some of the inferences that we're making from this data, is this large variety of riders. We know that from survey results, riders who are younger, 20 to 29, typically are looking to be commuters. We know that folks in their 40s, 50s, they prefer more of a leisure kind of riding style. And then we know that older than that, definitely leisure, but we have seen folks with fixed incomes who really lack that upfront capital to purchase a vehicle. So they are looking for a car replacement, essentially. And this is definitely a pathway. So they have their own community style of running errands and staying local. All right. As I mentioned, a little bit more applicant demographics. Our average rider age is 45 years. 90% of our applicants are at or below 225% of the federal poverty level. We have 35% of applicants in low-income communities, 4% in disadvantaged communities, and 27% reside in both DAC disadvantaged communities and low-income communities. So that's a cumulative percentage. I know 4% looks low as disadvantaged communities, but that's actually, you can add that up with the 27%. All right. And so over the last almost 2 years, over 2 years now, that we've been implementing the program, we've received just about 5,000 emails just through CARB, not counting what comes through our project website. So through our project website, for example, we had almost 20,000 emails and phone calls within a week when we launched. But just talking about what we've received through CARB and the stories that we've heard, what we know is we're seeing a lot of first-time e-bike riders, a lot of households on fixed incomes, as I mentioned, a lot of retirees who desire to increase their mobility, just more movement, moving around. Being stuck in a house is not something they want to keep doing. Fear of public transportation. We've had folks who have experienced actual attacks on public transit, single-parent households, and riders with disabilities. So, of course, all of those riders, they face adoption challenges with upfront capital, some of the stigmas around safety, of course. But we're going to go into a little bit more of what's not exactly laid out through the project. So, for example, there's still a lot of folks that have rider safety concerns. Battery safety is still a huge concern, especially with the I think, media attention on fires in, for example, New York, even San Francisco. So California is definitely addressing some of those e-bike stigmas. For example, Assembly Bill 1946 requiring the Department of Highway Patrol to develop e-bike safety and training programs and make those readily available. We know there's other safety programs out there, including our own program, but just making sure that those resources are available and making sure that we have the most informed riders that we possibly can. For battery safety, for those of you familiar with the e-bike rule, you will have seen Assembly Bill 1271, and that raises the bar on battery certifications through UL and European standards. It also enables fire marshals to develop charging safety standards, and we've seen this in San Francisco on how these batteries are charged, the limits on the feet that you can charge from, using power strips, things of that nature. Oops. There we go. All right, going back to e-bike safety. So we do have and require a basic safety video to be watched before an application can be approved. It's a short, roughly 20-minute video, and it includes riding best practices, maintenance, charging and battery safety, and just some general e-bike information. And of course, this helps with educating our first-time e-bike riders on a lot of the just basics, but we definitely recommend other resources for increasing that e-bike safety knowledge, including real-world riding and safety programs. All right. And finally, safe biking infrastructure is always at the top of our list. Always in our public work groups, we're hearing about the challenges with e-bike infrastructure. We know that from working with our project partners as well. Surveys consistently rank infrastructure as a barrier to e-bike adoption. We know that from hospital data, 29% of e-bike accidents involve a motor vehicle. That's from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. And e-bike accidents are more likely to be in low-income communities with a history of disinvestment, and we know that from the data out there on where e-bike accidents are occurring, the corridors they're occurring in, and those high percentage of accidents are likely to occur in a common number of corridors. This picture, I think, in this slide definitely represents some of the things we've seen as bike riders. I'm sure some of you can relate. So with that, I just wanted to pose a couple of questions to the audience and just kind of food for thought, something to think of as I pass it over to Ollie and Michelle. What type of riders are predominantly represented in your community? What infrastructure improvements could your community benefit from? And how do e-bikes fit into a car-centric built environment? And with that, I'll pass it to Michelle.
Thanks, Shaun. Let's see. All right. I wanted to ask, how many people are you representing a nonprofit or CBO? Any local agency staff in the room? I know there's some state agency staff in the room. Okay. I'll start by saying I'm Michelle Lieberman. I work for UC Davis, but I'm not a researcher. I'm a planning practitioner. And I've spent the majority of my career providing technical assistance around active transportation. I came from the nonprofit world. So trying to help, honestly, other nonprofits and community organizations make their communities better for walking and biking. So I'm going to present some information and know that these are probably things that you're trying to get put in place in your community. So hopefully myself and Allie can be a resource for you moving forward. So Shaun talked a little bit about challenges and barriers, and I often hear barriers kind of along two major themes. One, the lack of supportive infrastructure, like there aren't any places to bike, or there aren't any traffic calm streets. Everything's, a high-speed road. Also, unsafe behaviors by cyclists and drivers. And I'm not a traffic safety expert, so I'm not going to talk about the second one as much, but I'll say that we know that infrastructure can also deter those unsafe behaviors. So we know that we're able to, when we narrow roads, we're able to slow down speeds. So infrastructure improvements can do a lot for both providing that space and also providing a context for safe behaviors and behaviors where drivers and cyclists and everybody sort of respects each other. So, by improving infrastructure for active transportation overall, for people who are walking, biking, using mobility devices, accessing transit, we know that we are improving infrastructure for e-bikes. So I'm going to talk a lot more broadly about active transportation infrastructure and anything that really helps the people outside of private vehicles. And how are communities improving infrastructure? I hope that communities are working at all three of these levels or steps, both by putting in the policies, those foundational policies like Complete Streets and Vision Zero, and other policies that prioritize active transportation, by creating those plans, those bike plans, those pedestrian plans, and incorporating active transportation into other community plans. And then finally, and probably the most important thing obviously is getting those things implemented, finding the funding and actually constructing the infrastructure. So I only have a few minutes today, and I don't want to give you a whole lesson in infrastructure, but I do want to provide some examples of infrastructure that we see communities in California and across the nation putting in place to really support cycling in particular. And these are things that you might be thinking about or encouraging the cities and communities that you're working in to put in place. First, and these are kind of along the theme of providing dedicated space separate from car traffic for people on bikes. So infrastructure that supports cycling first is the Class 1 bike paths. These are off-street paths, sometimes called shared use paths, that completely separate bike and pedestrian traffic from car traffic. A couple examples here. On the right is the Lower Laguna Creek project in Elk Grove. That was funded by an active transportation program grant that I know Allie's going to talk a little bit about. On the left is Davis, California. And then also we're seeing a huge increase in the number of separated bikeways. These are sometimes called cycle tracks. They are on street, but provide a dedicated space for bikes that have some sort of barrier between the bikes and the car lanes. So this could be a raised planter, it could be a buffer with bollards, like the picture on the right from San Francisco. The one on the left is in San Clemente with a sort of a raised planted median. And these are doing a lot to address the concerns that drivers have when people are on e-bikes and they're mixing with traffic. And sometimes in communities you're seeing behaviors where people on e-bikes, middle schoolers a lot of times, are weaving in and out of traffic. But providing that dedicated space does a lot to provide the comfortable, safer area for cyclists, but also address some of the concerns that drivers have. And then we're also seeing this increase in protected intersections. So when a separated bikeway comes up to an intersection, we don't want to just dump the cyclist off into the car traffic, but we're seeing this increase in intersections called protected intersections that continue that separation from cars. So I'm just showing one picture here from Davis where an intersection has been transformed into a protected intersection. Seeing a big increase in these in California as we grow our cycling infrastructure. And there's a lot of new and updated guides out there So if you in your community are advocating or encouraging your local agency to put in new infrastructure, I would really encourage you to encourage them to take a look at these new resources. So there's the NACTO Urban Bikeway Design Guide that was just redone, that's out now, as well as AASHTO has put out a new guide for the development of bike facilities, their bike guide. So take a look at those. Okay, and then when we talk about infrastructure, that always comes with challenges because the questions are always, well, where's the funding? We don't have the money for this. And also, infrastructure takes a long time. So we don't want to tell our community that we have to wait, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years for this to be built. So what we're really seeing, and I'd like to encourage communities to look at, is doing something called quick builds. And using this as a strategy. And quick builds are essentially a interim capital project to put, address the safety needs right away, to put improvements, low cost but durable improvements in place quickly that are also flexible. So that way you can put it in place, community members can test it out, they can give feedback. Is it in the right spot? Is it the right treatment? And those things can be altered. And the intent is that this quick build will stay up for a period of time to sort of bridge the gap between now and when a permanent project can be put in place. So lower cost, quicker implementation, allow that community input, testing, making sure it's the right improvement to be making, and then going forward with a more permanent project. I have a couple examples of this from Southern California. This one, and the first one is from Laguna Niguel. It's the Aliso Creek Road Separated Bikeway, and they're doing this part of their active transportation plan development and testing out 3 different treatments. They've got the green bollards, they've got the white flexible bollards, and then they've used just rubber parking stops along the stretch, and they're asking the community, do you like this? What would you like to see here? But also, where would you like to see this in other places, and what sort of treatments would you like to see in other parts of the city? And this was funded by a federal Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A grant. And I'll just note that the current NOFO is open, or is out. And they do fund demonstration projects as well as planning and implementation. And implementation grants are fairly competitive, but the planning and demonstration are less competitive. It still comes with federal grant requirements, which are sometimes not fun, but it is a good source of funding if you're looking to do demonstration projects. And then the other one is from Ojai, the Maricopa Highway Project, and their quick build was actually a few years ago. But they had a permanent project in mind, so they wanted to demonstrate the concept design and then figure out if that was going to be like the right fit or make adjustments. So they did a quick build where they reallocated the second vehicle lane. This is the picture on the upper right. They had some improved pedestrian crossings, and they created this on-street separated bikeway. And then the permanent project ended up with, this is a rendering on the bottom, a 2-way Class 1 bike facility on one side, a Class 2 bike facility, so on-street on the other side, and then some additional improvements. I just saw on the city's website that their project, a couple weeks ago, they were announcing that it was almost complete. So, is anybody familiar with the Ojai area? And like, have you? Awesome, great. So yeah, it's really exciting to see one that went from quick build and what the iteration was over time, and then to see the permanent project put in place. That was funded by an active transportation program grant. Some additional resources on quick builds. I know the slides are going to be posted afterwards, so you can grab them and take a look at them, including a quick build guide from the California Bicycle Coalition and also planning. There's this tactical urbanist guide, and then NACTO also has an interim design strategies guide as well. So with that, I will pass it over to Allie, and hopefully at the end we can have questions and discussion, and yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doerr Westbrook. I work at Caltrans headquarters in Sacramento, and I'm in our Division of Local Assistance, Office of State Programs. And I specifically support the Active Transportation Program, which is a statewide grant to help fund and build active transportation projects across California. Great. So my title there is Active Transportation Resource Center Project Manager. Very long. I'll just start saying ATRC throughout this presentation. But the goal of the ATRC is to provide resources, technical assistance, and training to transportation partners across California to increase opportunity for the success of active transportation projects. And I want to say, we're not only here to support transportation partners, really anyone that's interested in investing in their communities, the ATRC is here to help you. So we work a lot with public health professionals, school districts, folks at CARB, really the full spectrum. If you're interested in doing a transportation project in your community, the ATRC can support you. All right, and the focus at the ATRC is for folks applying for the Active Transportation Program, which you heard Michelle speak on a little bit. The purpose is to encourage increased use of active modes of transportation. So, once folks have received their e-bikes from CARB and they're really excited to get on the road, and they want to, speak with their local electeds or city council members about having projects actually built in their community, the ATP is a funding source available to them to actually build these projects. And so through the Active Transportation Program, we fund infrastructure, small, medium, and large projects. We also do non-infrastructure, which would be like, I'll expand upon it a little bit more on later slides, but safe routes to school projects, open streets events, those are examples of non-infrastructure. Combination projects, so if you wanted to build a separated bikeway, but also do education with a school nearby, that's an example of a combination, and then plans. For plan projects, the ATP mainly focuses on communities that do not have an existing active transportation plan or haven't updated their plan in about 5 or so years, but that is another project type that's available through the ATP. And since the creation of the Active Transportation Program, over 1,000 projects have been funded across the state. And I've linked here to our webpage and also an ATP fact sheet if you're interested in learning more about the program and some of the projects that we've funded. So our partners at the ATRC include the California Transportation Commission, the California Department of Public Health, UC Davis Institute of Transportation Studies, and California State University at Long Beach. And I wanted to highlight this here because specifically our partnership with public health has been very important in our delivery of non-infrastructure projects across California, and we've had the privilege of working with them for the past decade or so. And that's something I really want to encourage anyone that's applying for the ATP is reach out to your public health partners, because they're already in the community talking with folks, and I think it really just makes for a much more competitive application if you have a diversity of folks that you're applying with. And then, of course, UC Davis has just been a tremendous partner as we're expanding our research portfolio and learning more about the benefits of active transportation. Okay, so at a glance, the ATRC does a number of things. We have our website with dozens of resources that I think are really beneficial for anyone doing active transportation work. So whether you're getting funded through Caltrans or through a CARB grant, which we've heard a lot about today, we have resources available for folks there. We also have a monthly newsletter where we offer a variety of different webinars, trainings, links to different funding opportunities, both at the state and federal level. And I want to make a plug. We're always, trying to encourage folks to share what you're working on with us. So if you're interested in sharing out some of your projects or just want to get information out to folks across California, reach out to us. And then webinars is another big thing that we do at the ATRC. And specific to e-bikes, excuse me, in April of last year, we actually had a webinar on rolling out e-bikes with a safe system approach, where we heard from folks at the California Bicycle Coalition, People for Bikes, and then also our public health community around some of the safety concerns that they're hearing around the adoption of e-bikes. But I think, while there is concerns, there are ways that we can address this through infrastructure. And so that was a really great conversation if you're interested in learning more. We also offer trainings. So we have an active transportation introduction to planning and design course, which is free and available to communities across California, and that will be virtual. So again, I think this is just another tool when you're working in your communities and folks are expressing interest in active transportation, but maybe they don't have the training or planning experience. This is a resource that you can share with them. It's free, which is very rare these days with training. So I just wanted to make folks aware of this opportunity. And we will be having an in-person training in October, but we're always hoping to hear from partners. If your community would like the ATRC to come out and do an in-person training, we are happy to do that as well. So definitely speak with me after the session if that's something you're interested in. All right. So next, I just want to highlight a few of the different initiatives that we have going on. So I spoke earlier about non-infrastructure projects. Types of non-infrastructure projects can include classroom and PE lessons, mock cities, walking and bike audits, safe routes to school events, open streets events. So all of these types of projects are funded through the ATP, and we are able to help with technical assistance. So if you're putting together an application but aren't quite sure, what it takes to host a successful Open Streets event, we're here to help you. Another initiative that we have right now at the ATRC is our Disadvantaged Technical Assistance Program. And so through this, we're working with up to 30 communities across California to put together an application for the Active Transportation Program. So through this technical assistance, we'll help with project scope development, narrative response reviews, assistance with gathering data, and also putting together your budget and cost estimates. So this is something that we've done for several cycles of the ATP and seen really great success by providing assistance to folks prior to them submitting their application. And on our website, everything I'm talking about here is linked. So if you're interested in learning more about the technical assistance that we've provided, and also this, maybe learning a little bit more about the folks who went through this program, you can do so on our website. Another exciting project that we're doing at the ATRC is our California Active Transportation Data Portal. So through our program, anyone that's awarded a project with the ATP is required to submit before and after counts for their projects. And so, the department, we were collecting this information, but it wasn't really being shared anywhere. So we're working with the University of Berkeley right now to create a statewide data portal so folks can collect their counts for their projects and publicly share that information, and we can start to track trends. After investments are made in these infrastructure projects, are we seeing increases in people walking and biking? I think it's also a great tool for folks as you're putting together your grant applications as well. You can see trends that are occurring around your project location. So that will be live and published on our website within the year, and we're really excited about that effort. Along with the data portal, we're also working with Nelson Nygaard, which is a consulting firm, to pilot optional performance metrics that synthesize the project level benefits of ATP projects. So, outside of collecting counts, what other information is important to our communities? And so some of the things we're doing is developing instructions and tools to better highlight, what partnerships how did partnerships, increase through the development of this project? How did driver behavior change? How did the speed in the area, was it reduced at all when you built the separated bikeway? Did you see an increase of students traveling along your corridor. We're looking at a bunch of different performance metrics, and these are all tools that are available to all of you, whether you're applying for the active transportation program or, a program through CARB. So I wanted to highlight that there, and it's linked in my slides. Okay, so I spoke already a little bit about the ATP Disadvantaged Communities Technical Assistance Program, but I didn't share that the application period is open now. So if you or any of your partners are interested in applying for the next cycle of ATP, I'd encourage you to consider applying for this. Applications are due on April 21st, and as mentioned before, you'll get, lots of support, almost a year's worth of support in putting together your application. So I think we're really excited to be able to provide this to folks. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk with you after. Okay. And then a shameless plug. So if you're, we've had some really great conversations here with folks, but if you're just dying to talk more about active transportation and want to come up to Northern California in October, the ATRC is hosting our 2025 California Active Transportation Program Symposium. So it'll be 2 days of fun with people that are just really invested in increasing walking and biking across California. We'd love to see you all there, and I think it's just a great opportunity to connect with other people like yourself that really care about creating more sustainable communities in California. So thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure being here this afternoon, and here is our email address if you'd like to connect with the ATRC or work on any projects with us. We'd love to chat with you. Thank you.
So maybe we'll give... I know some people are copying down the email address, and then we're going to switch over to the Mentimeter. All right. And we'll keep this up as we go through Q&A and discussion, but we wanted to hear from you all, what are the other challenges around e-bikes in your community? So if you want to go to menti.com and enter the code, or scan the QR code, you can add to our list real time what are the challenges. I wish we had also put up what are your ideas for improvements? So we weren't just negative, but sorry. We can verbally talk about your ideas for improvements.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle and Allie. Really great presentations. And with that, just opening it up for questions, comments, discussion. Yeah.
Hi, thank you all for sharing. That was really great. So I actually had a question about the e-bike incentive project. So I actually had family members apply in December, and the QIT system that the program had made the application process very, very competitive. I think at one point I heard that up to 100,000 folks had applied, and with only 1,000 applications being processed and awards being given out. I'm curious what the learnings were from that application cycle that you guys planned to take with you into Funding Wave 2 and beyond, because obviously, the interest is there, but it seems that it makes for a very, very competitive opportunity for disadvantaged folks. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it was a great learning experience for us. It's an entirely different animal, I will say, than our other incentive programs, given that the demand is so high, so instantaneous. It was a little bit of a black box going into it. We had seen other incentive programs launch across the country, so we did take some of those lessons learned, mainly being QIT, to help keep our website from crashing. But still, the instantaneous demand causes a lot of anxiety for applicants, and I think there's a lot of speculation about what happened during that process. So who got in? Did anyone get in? These are a lot of the questions we got from the media following in the aftermath. So Qt did do its job. It did buffer folks into our Salesforce servers, which we were trying to keep from crashing. But still, there was issues with internet connections. There was folks who had multiple internet tabs open, or maybe they didn't have the most up-to-date web browser or proximity to Wi-Fi. What we learned, what I'm saying here is there was so many variables on the applicant side that we couldn't control for. And I think that was a big problem with a first-come, first-served process with this much demand. So going into Windows 2, we're seeking to eliminate as much of that variability as we can. So what we're doing is actually a randomization process. And we are still using Qt, but we're just using them for the waiting room function and randomization. The randomization, we think, eliminates a lot of those factors that might have been factors in the first come, first serve, such as the internet connectivity, issues with your browser, things like that. So that is the main lesson learned. And of course, the messaging is another big piece. So making sure that we're clear, concise on everything we put out there. So that's something we hope we've improved on here for Windows 2. And we know there's more. We're not done yet. It's an ongoing process, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Daichi Ruiz. I'm a community organizer with Healthy Active Streets, and we predominantly do work with mobility justice and work with a lot of frontline lower-income communities who need access to transportation, and predominantly preferring of like bicycles because they're easier to afford and things. And I just had a question involving the next window of the e-bike incentive program. What safeguards do you guys have in place that's going to be able to address like giving out the vouchers in a more equitable way to make sure that the people who actually need those vouchers are going to get to them instead of like just anybody can get to it based on a first come first serve? So like basically like how are you able to address the equity factor?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we actually took our lessons learned from our soft launch for Windows 2 and are applying those. Essentially what we've done is we've created 2 tracks for applicants to take, one being the online version where they come and they get randomized. But what we also did is we held a public work group in March, and we proposed a CBO set aside. So what that essentially means is we're carving out a portion of the funding for our CBO network to distribute in their communities. It works out roughly to about 20 to 25 incentives per CBO across 22 CBOs. And the idea being that they use their local knowledge to find those applicants who are the most in need. Because we know that, for example, someone could be low income, for example, but maybe they just had a bad year last year, but they still have a lot of assets, $1 million house or something like that, a lot of cars. You could argue it a lot of ways, but I think we could safely say they might not be the most ideal candidate for this program, right? So that is what the CBO track is intended for, is to find those applicants who are most in need. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if we can scroll.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Ooh, we can scroll. Okay.
Hi, I'm George, VP of Engineering or Planning. I have 2 questions. One, New York City, I think they placed a ban on sale of non-UL certified e-bikes. Is there a similar plan going to happen here in California or in in certain cities in California?
Yeah,
And,
that
and
is.
sorry, I have a
Oh,
second
yeah,
question.
yeah.
And then if someone can talk about the difference between bikes and e-bikes in regards to, creating lanes and infrastructure, e-bikes, the speeds are about twice as fast as a normal bike. So if you can speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
I'll take the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. The UL and EN certifications are well on their way with AB 1271, and those will be required in 2026 for all e-bikes sold, and then also all e-bikes rented, so any of the mobility providers will be held to that standard also. And we've already adopted those standards as, just getting ready for that. They have to be UL certified, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have much to say, but yeah, I think with the difference between bikes and e-bikes, there becomes the speed differential between the bikes and the pedestrians is kind of the most concerning. So, things like shared paths are less ideal, and having spaces that are really dedicated for bikes and that pedestrians have their own pathway that is meant for a walking speed, I think becomes the most important thing.
Yeah, I'll just say for infrastructure right now in California, we don't have a bikeway classification specific to e-bikes. But I think that conversation is definitely taking place. There's a bill actually right now in the legislature, and I wish I could remember the name, but on bike highways. So I think they're already starting to think, with the adoption of e-bikes, people will be traveling much quicker. And to Michelle's point, yeah, the difference when you have those mixed-use facilities of people walking and biking, that's a big concern. I know in Sacramento, where I live, on our trails, people are supposed to bike 15 miles per hour. That is not happening. But in some communities, they have, placed speed limits on bicycles.
So with that adoption of e-bike highways coming in through the legislature, does ATRC see themselves also funding those projects for infrastructure that would build those those e-bike highways or bike highways?
I think the specific bill is actually targeted at Caltrans to build out a bicycle highway network. But there are some communities within the Bay Area that have also, I've seen go that route. Potentially. I mean, we fund large infrastructure projects in previous cycle. Those more transformative, they weren't branded as bike highways, but much larger projects. We had, one in Santa Cruz, actually, that was quite successful. So, yeah, it really varies. I would say for the active transportation program, we're actually seeing a lot more combination projects, which I think is great, especially for a lot of the nonprofit partners here in the room that are already experienced in doing education and encouragement events, working with your cities, counties, MPOs, tribal governments on projects, I think is a really great way to go. So would just encourage, combination projects. Yeah.
And then just one comment, I would love to see Caltrans and ATRC actually show up alongside the e-bike program, with CARBs and a lot more spaces, because I think that is probably one of the biggest complaints I hear. I work on Access Clean California. We talk to the whole state. A lot of people complain about the lack of infrastructure for micromobility, that sort of clean mobility options in space. And so I think showing up together and showing people that they can get their e-bike and also create the infrastructure for it too would be incredibly beneficial.
Okay, we're happy to be there. Yeah, just invite us. Yeah, I think Michelle and I, it's we try to participate in these conversations whenever we can, but there's definitely a lot of convenings that we're not aware of. So if you ever want us to attend, we're happy. We're kind of like ATP ambassadors, so we're happy to go anywhere in California, talk about the program, especially the technical assistance, really want to emphasize, like, if your community has not applied for the ATP, that's exactly who we're hoping to work with through this program. It's completely free, very easy application, and I checked to see how many people had signed up so far, and we haven't got to 30 yet. So right now it's looking like we'll be able to work with a majority of folks who are applying for the program. So again, applications due April 21st. Come talk to me after if you're interested.
Hi. I have a bit of a different question, I think. My name is Valeria. I'm currently an executive fellow at GOBIS, but I'm a recent graduate of UC Davis. And during my time there, I worked with other UC campuses to try to get micromobility in their campuses. And a lot of the times we were told, like, try to go through the university because the city itself is very, very hostile to these types of projects. And so I can only imagine that our universities are a reflection of our other communities. And so I'm wondering, like, are quick builds the answer there? Like, when we are trying to work, and that's why I think, this is a different type of question, I think. When we're trying to implement these projects, but we see such hostility, like either, just resistance to change, or there's a myriad of reasons, right? Cost, and so. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
It might be. I've been suggesting it a lot. I mean, part of it is like, okay, it's lower cost, but also like the sort of temporary pilot nature of it. It's like, put it in all those communities that might say like, oh, but we're going to lose parking, or we're going to do that. Like, try it out. Like, you can take it out. And I think, doing that, you can frame it as like you're trying it out, but oftentimes, like, once it goes in, people are like, oh, it didn't impact me that much, or, oh, I actually kind of liked it. So, or like, we could do this, and could you tweak it a little bit, and then I would like it even more, and hopefully that opens the conversation instead of being like, no, because I want something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I'll just add, if that's okay. I failed to mention earlier, but through the Active Transportation Program, we have historically funded quick build projects as well. I think that rose in popularity during the pandemic. So we have several cycles of the ATP funding quick builds. I know in our next cycle, we're going to have conversations with partners around whether or not, the ATP should continue to fund quick build projects. But yeah, I think that's great. Keep talking about Sacramento, but just a few weeks ago, actually, the city created a quick build program where there'll be a team of 6 engineers working to build quick build projects across the city. San Diego has done something similar, San Francisco as well. So, I think if you start building those relationships with city staff and really pushing this model of quick build, you can point to other localities within California that are thinking about this, because waiting 10 years to see an investment when we know there's a need right now just isn't going to cut it for many of our communities. Yeah.
Does anybody want to expand on any of the challenges that you might have put up? I've seen everything from maintenance to heavy bikes to bike theft.
Any questions online or? No?
No.
Okay. Well, we are at 4:30 and almost ready for closing remarks. And last call, otherwise I think we can close it out. Oh.
Oh, wow. That was instantaneous. Yeah, I just have a question for you. I live in a small community, but it's a college town, and one of the issues that we have is parking. So bike routes, bike set-asides have been contentious in our community with respect to, well, all of a sudden now my parking spot is gone. Or if I'm elderly, now I have to like put my trash can out Or, hey, what's this going to do with emergency services because of the steep hillsides or this or that? What kind of resources do you have to address those kind of issues, or what kind of, where should one go to get those kind of resources?
I'm trying to.
So on the emergency services side, we've heard this, and at our symposium, I think we're actually going to have people talking about that. I don't know any specifics, though. But yeah, I would say, feel free to email us at the ATRC, and we can try to pull together examples from other communities that sometimes will make a difference to, for city staff to see something from another city, like, oh, they managed to do it, or this is how they did it. We can try to pull together some resources and examples for you.
Yeah, I'll also just add, at the ATRC, we support the Active Transportation Program Technical Advisory Committee, so it's made up of partners across California, and we can also reach out to those folks as well to see if there's anything that they can share with us. But that's kind of a space where we've brought forward challenges that we're hearing from folks and talking with other partners. And then as far as working with emergency services, I think I've heard a lot from the Bay Area about how they're working closely with their fire department and stuff, especially around separated bikeways. But I'm sure there's other communities. So yeah, as Michelle said, happy to follow up with you after. Maybe we'll do a webinar on this topic because I think it's could be really helpful for folks.
Hello. I actually wanted to add to this issue is that during the LA fires, we had a, getting folks out of, especially in the Palisades, it was cars that were in the way for emergency services to get to folks and get them out. They literally had to bulldoze over them and people had to just abandon their cars so that they can run away from the fires coming. And it was, I saw an interview of someone on a bike that got on his bike and got out of the fires faster. And so the emergency issue has kind of been dispelled when it comes to actual just data from, real life. It's more of a stigma, and so there isn't real substance behind it, and it's more about departments are not working together, and we're not having those conversations, and in general, from the bicycle advocacy space, it's very hard to get people to release their car centricity in their mind. So that's just something that in these programs, yes, there's a lot of interest, 20,000 emails coming through. People love access to an incentive because it's an ability to get a technology that they're not able to budget for. But the actual transition to people being able to navigate on a bike in the infrastructure system that we have currently, which is far from where it needs to be safe, to be accessible, that in itself is something to consider in these spaces. It's not just enough to give people the bike itself or the incentive, and even then we don't have enough for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. But the safety training, for example, that's important, but it is online and it's not hands-on. So in our programs at Great Alternatives, when we do e-bike projects, we do hands-on e-bike training, and we pay local bike advocacy organizations that put on these trainings because they're the ones who have the LCI trainings, they have the staff, they know the rules of the road, they know the rules of their communities, and they're very familiar with the infrastructure of their community. And so it's not easy to get on an e-bike and be comfortable on an e-bike right away. It has a jolt, it has power, right? It's not the same as just the bike that you were used to riding when you were a kid or whatnot. So, and for many people, when you're looking at the demographics, it's older folks who probably haven't been on a bike in many years. Yeah. That's unless it's a stationary one. So I think just considering the world in which we're trying to create for folks to make this transition and make it accessible, it's many parts. You got the infrastructure, you have the safety training, you have the incentive itself, access to a bike shop to even like talk to someone to sell you that bike. So I think and this is nice to have like the comprehensive approach, but there's a lot of other elements as well. So I think what you were alluding to is like, there's a number of things that people have challenges with when infrastructure is coming through, or just like folks like, well, no, we don't want this because it's going to do X, Y, and Z, but we know those things are not actually going to be the results. It's a matter of like communicating that, right? So I think in the ways that you all can support that, and I know ATRC has a lot of that. I mean, 1,000 projects, and so it's definitely like, and I guess the other component is, and I wanted to ask Shaun, and I know that Caltrans has to do this often, and actually Davis is really helpful in this space, which is like the research there. When you bring that back to the legislature and you bring it back to decision makers who are in charge of the funding, and you're looking at active transportation is still like 1% to 2% funded out of all of our transportation. So we're still creating an environment that's just for cars. So we're looking at a very small slice, but we really need to focus on like, how do we actually get folks not just on the bike and access to the bike, but connected to the fact that like we need to make a very big investment in every community and across California, that this is important. And a third of Americans don't drive. So, and whether they're older, seniors, there's disability, they're younger, like you're looking at a big set of folks that don't have access to a car. A bike may be the way for them to get around. An e-bike is definitely going to help them mode shift in an effective way. That research has been done. We keep having to repeat that in every program to justify the funding that comes down. So I think we can move away from justifying that like e-bikes actually are doing what they need to do, which is to reduce VMTEs and help lower GHGs. Like we know that, but now we just need to focus on like the whole ecosystem around what that means. Like this has been done. You look at other places around the world, they are reducing the red tape. Like so, as where you sit in your agencies and your institutions, how are you focusing on that, right? And how do we like collaborate with local CBOs who have access to folks and other sense like that. So that was one kind of large rant.
Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd say I really appreciate organizations like yours, all the folks who are doing all of that to talk with folks, both higher up and at the community level, to make the connections and make those changes. So.
Mic drop.
I know, it's hard to follow.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
You should have been up here with us.
Right. We did an exercise where we looked at the potential market for this incentive program and looking at low-income Californians over the age of 18 across California. And, we're talking about millions of people. And so if that light does go off, and we do know it is, the market's growing, it's growing year over year. COVID was a humongous boom in e-bike popularity. It's definitely not going away, like you said. Yeah, and it's the demand's going to be there. So I think making that safe built environment is definitely something we can't directly affect with the California e-bike incentive project, but having these conversations and keeping it moving is definitely what we'll keep doing. Yeah. I don't know if we have time to keep going or 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right.
Oh, we got two.
Does the incentive cover any safety equipment, helmets, reflective jackets, or anything like that?
Yes, yeah. Helmets, locks, visibility gear, racks, fenders, mirrors. There might be something else on that list, but yeah. And there is no max on those accessories either. So depending on where your purchase price is for that e-bike, you can end up with a lot of accessories.
I'll just add too, so the active transportation program does allow for the purchase of incentives as well. So helmets, bike locks, safety gear as well. We do have a limit though, so check out our non-infrastructure supplemental guidance if you want to know specifically how much can be spent for the purchase of those items.
Yeah, so I think like the symposium is a really good like space and opportunity for all of us to kind of get together and reflect and collaborate and like ask these hard-hitting questions. But I think sometimes we walk away without any action items. And so where does CARB and like maybe even the rest of y'all see yourselves after having this conversation and being at the symposium all day? What do you think your action items are now after hearing from everyone?
I can share.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think for me, I definitely want to interact with more folks and know like community partners that we can be sending ATP applicants to. So actually on the ATRC website, we now have, if you're a CBO that would like to partner with an agency on a project, you can share your information with us and we can help make that connection. So that's one thing. It's just making sure that, our government agencies are aware of nonprofits within their jurisdiction that they could be working with on their applications. That's a big takeaway for me. And I had one other thing, but I've lost it, so I'll pass it over to
So I was using this Mentimeter as a fact-finding. I really wanted to hear other challenges, to really think about what are the other things the ATRC could be doing to help folks address those challenges. Just having an understanding of the challenges is really helpful for us. So might end up being, I don't know, a webinar, or I think we heard some good topics for that, or other, materials, resources that we develop. So thank you for putting those up there.
Yeah. And I think for CARB, we're always looking for ways to improve our kind of outreach and education, and especially with our CBO network. So reinforcing those elements of the program that we can't directly affect, but we can kind of steer to the extent that we can. So working with our CBO network to just continue to raise awareness about this, continue to be good stewards of the state funding, and creating that safe built environment for our e-bike riders. Yeah.
It came to me. Yeah, so I think we tried to do it on our panel, talking about the incentives, but then also the infrastructure to support, folks. So I think that is a big takeaway for me, is connecting with CARB staff and finding out who has received grants through them that might not have already applied for the active transportation program. Just having more coordination. We do a little bit of it, but I think it was mentioned earlier, like we're such large agencies, sometimes, we silo ourselves. Not intentionally, but it just kind of happens. You get so focused on your work. So, yeah, I think that was another big takeaway for me today.
All right. Another question? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of like bicycle infrastructure, so for example, I'm from Long Beach, and we have a lot of bicycle infrastructure. However, it's predominantly within like the downtown area and like more wealthy. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So I'm from Long Beach, and as I was saying, we have a lot of bicycle infrastructure that's predominantly within the downtown area. However, if you look on maps and stuff like that, there's not a lot of infrastructure within, the west side of Long Beach or the north side of Long Beach, where a lot of disadvantaged communities and communities of color are predominantly living in. So I was just wondering, what are ways that we are trying to address like the inequities of like disadvantaged communities and infrastructure, because that's a huge issue with, involving like people of color not wanting to ride because they don't have bike lanes in their communities and stuff like that. And parking's already an enormous issue. They're usually like one-lane streets, but people are driving 60 miles an hour, and people are killed constantly. And I feel like we as a society are not like looking hard enough to address these issues in order to help people of color feel safe. And I'm just wondering like what we collectively as like a community are actually trying to do to address these inequities.
Can I talk about ATP?
Yeah, I was going to do that. Yeah.
Oh,
No, I was just going to.
I'll just mention one thing with the active transportation program. Ally mentioned the disadvantaged communities technical assistance. There's also criteria within the ATP application where you get awarded more points if the project is located within a disadvantaged community, and it has specific criteria, income. There's a couple other things, and because the ATP is underfunded and so competitive, the vast majority, like almost all of the projects, awards go to projects within disadvantaged communities. So that's one of, I think, the funding programs that really is set up to address the needs of the communities that need it the most. So one example. So I think having more of that where our funding is prioritized in that way can do a lot.
I was just going to say, we do have a demographic data point that we are collecting, but it's not mandatory. It's a voluntary question. So to the extent that we can share that reporting, with our partners here.
Yeah. And I think, one thing all of you can do is, advocate to the legislature too, to make sure that these funding programs continue to be funded and aren't cut. So, when budget conversations are happening, if there is state programs that are really important to your communities, make sure that they're not, on the chopping block when those budget decisions are being made. That's all I can really say from my state position. But talk to me later if you want to know my personal thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. We're getting the boot. Okay. But thank you guys. Thanks to everyone for sticking it out with us. And stick around for final comments.